Welcome to the show, Don't Pick the Scab Podcast. Today I have the privilege of introducing Gloria Vanderhorst, a seasoned psychologist, insightful author, devoted wife, loving mother, and proud grandmother with decades of experience helping individuals and families navigate life's toughest transitions. Dr. Vanderhorst has become a trusted guide for those seeking clarity and healing. Her compassionate approach and deep understanding of the human mind have empowered countless people to overcome adversity and rebuild stronger than ever. Whether in her clinical practice, her writing, or her own family life, Dr. Vanderhorst leads with empathy, wisdom, and an unwavering belief in the power of personal growth. Men over 40 facing the challenge of divorce will find her insights invaluable for moving forward and resilience and purpose. Dr. Vanderhorst, thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise with our listeners today. And tell us a little about yourself.
Thank you first for that introduction. That was lovely. I am a passionate psychologist. I do love to write as well. So on my website, you can find all of my writings. But my new and devoted passion is to help men and to help them understand themselves and to really understand what the culture has done to boys from infancy forward. We limit your access to the full range of emotion. We don't start out doing it intentionally, but there is a point where we actually do it intentionally, and that leads to emotional handicap for every male.
So when we talk about the thing I focused on before, or I've heard, we talk about the men being the hunter-gatherers, don't cry, keep upper stiff lip. How does that hamper us in order not to feel our emotions and heal from divorce?
When you are a toddler and you start to move around, your parents, your older siblings, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, everyone in the culture discourages boys from expressing the full range of emotion. You guys can be bold, you can be brave, you can be angry, but you cannot be tender. You cannot be sensitive. You will get shamed for being tender or sensitive. Were you ever called a sissy? Were you ever put down for having some emotion that wasn't on the aggressive, angry, irritated side? If you were hurt, maybe even felt like you wanted to cry, maybe even did cry, were you ever made fun of for expressing those emotions? Sure. It's happened to absolutely every male, and it is so difficult to regain access to that range of feeling states when you've been trained since you were a toddler not to go into that tender, soft feeling stage. We tell you right up front, don't cry. Boys don't cry. It's really difficult to recover from that.
How does that relate to men always want to take care of everybody else before we take care of ourselves?
That's
Self-care,
absolutely true.
I think, is huge. And what kind of man going through divorce recovery start the self-care journey in addition to everything else you just talked about?
Yeah, think about what happens. I'm going to have you focus on being a toddler, right? Because that's where the lion's share of the training takes place. And if you get trained at 2, 3, 4, 5 years of age to think of yourself in a particular way and to eliminate certain feeling states, right? You can't cry. You can't show tenderness, right? You clearly cannot play with dolls, right? In kindergarten, you can't even go into the kitchen corner, right? Even though famous world chefs are male, kindergarten, you're not allowed in the kitchen corner and certainly not in the housekeeping corner, right? You can't do anything that makes you vulnerable in any way. So I tell people, go to the playground, go to the mall, watch the interaction between parents and toddlers. If a little girl gets distressed on the playground and runs up to mom or dad, she'll get picked up and she'll then get asked what happened. If a little boy, same distress, same issue, runs up to mom or dad, he gets asked what happened. If he gives a good enough answer, he'll get picked up and get some comfort. All right. So we train you guys really early on to cut off access to the full range of emotions. All right. We don't want you crying. Really don't want you complaining. We don't want you having needs. Think of that, right? We don't want you having needs. You can't even need to be comforted when you're 3 and someone has taken your toy away.
Be strong. Why is failure, that's really big for men, why is failure such a big hurdle for men after
Right.
war?
As the expectation for men is performance, right? You have always, caveman, right? You've been expected to be brave, go out, take your spear, kill food, all right? Modern world version of that is go to work, earn money, bring money back into the house, all right? So that your wife can stay home and take care of the children. That's changing, all right? Because women are in the workforce almost full time at this point, and there are men staying home to take care of children. But the history is that we have an attitude that men are supposed to be the problem solver. They're supposed to be the ones that are brave. They're supposed to be the ones that we call on when we're in trouble. And so you can't afford to be sensitive. We don't want you to be sensitive. That barrier is breaking at this point because there are men's groups all over the United States that are helping men to discover the full range of their emotional capability. And I say to that, we need more of that. And there are men's groups that have formed, I think, in every city to facilitate legitimizing the fact that men have sensitive feelings. They've just been buried. Your brain doesn't lose access. It boxes it up, and you can unbox it. You can open that box and find the full range of emotions. And I encourage every guy to do that.
I know it's getting better, but why was therapy and men such a hard thing to do?
It is getting better, right? But clearly, we have never really wanted our men to take a deep dive into their emotional lives. That's why they get heart attacks, right? That's why they have a variety of different physical symptoms, because we have told them since a very young age that they have to cut off access to a complete range of emotion. And so it's difficult to take the risk of displaying emotion, even when it's truly legitimate. All right. Someone you really love dies. All right. Go to a funeral. Look at the men. All right. They are working hard not to cry when they have lost one of the most important people in their lives. Why not cry? It's normal. It's natural. All right. They should be crying, but they're working very hard not to shed a tear. And that's because we trained you before you started preschool to cut off access to your feelings.
Can men reconnect with their sense of identity post-divorce? Because you go from 2 to 1. So it's almost like you're almost cut in half.
You are cut in half. Yeah. And so first it's to recognize how painful that is and be truly honest with yourself that you can't recover from that on your own. Think about that, right? You've just been cut in half. It's so painful that you want to deny the significance of that. Hopefully, someone in your network will confront you and say, you need to get some help. You need to talk to somebody. You need to work through this. And you will have the courage to do that. You have the courage to do that. And you're here encouraging other men to follow your lead and just have the courage to admit that we have denied your access to feelings. And so, in the course of living through a divorce, the feelings that are going to come up are anger, right? Real anger, real irritation. Anger is a secondary feeling. It's not a primary feeling, except in severe danger. Then it's a primary feeling. But it is generally a secondary feeling. So you have to be able to identify, what are you feeling first? And anger is the feeling you use to escape the primary feeling. But there's a whole range of things that you're naturally feeling in the course of a divorce, right? You're feeling hurt. You're feeling rejected. You're feeling afraid. You're feeling worried, all right? You're feeling you're in danger. There's just a whole range of feelings, and you need to find a safe place to name them, to talk about them, to explore them. And there are safe places out there, all right? You might have to hunt for them, but there are safe places. There's therapy, there are divorce groups, there are retreats for men. Take the risk. It's well worth it.
Switch gears to co-parenting. A lot of men, especially in an adversarial co-parenting situation, have a hard time co-parenting. And mine was like that. It was very adversarial. And I figured out the way to get through it was I had to love my kids more than I hated my ex.
It's-
And that was, it was tough, man. So
That is tough.
what are some of the things you can tell men when they're in that situation, how to handle it?
Yeah, you've just told them, right? Which is shift your focus, move your focus away from the ex and towards your children, right? The ex is going to be making efforts to undermine your relationship, right and left. Sometimes it's just subtle little comments. Sometimes it is straightforward punches to the gut. There will be efforts, and you can't stop that. So if you back away and say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to have success in changing the attitude, the message, the things that my ex is doing to undermine my relationship, I have to figure out how to build a relationship with children who are being pickled, right? And disliking me. It's a challenge. But it's doable. And it's doable when you actually let go of the dynamic with your ex and just begin to focus on, what does your child need? Your kids want connection. They want connection with you. And if you're putting your energy into being irritated with your ex, you don't have energy to figure out, what do they need? How do they want to connect? They're making an effort to connect. You have to figure out, what's their effort about, all right? And some of them are going to do it very directly. They're going to want time with you. They're going to want you to do activities with them. Some of them are going to do it very indirectly, right? They're going to head to their room. They're going to close the door. You have to be brave enough to go in. And maybe you don't have to say anything. Maybe for the first several times, you just have to be present, all right? And then thank them for just letting you sit there and be present. Right? Every child is different, and you have to figure out, what's the need that this child has, because they want to connect. They just don't know how. And if your ex is doing an ad that says you're not worth connecting with or that it risks attachment to mother, if you connect with father, then you have to be really consistent with connection. You cannot fall down. I'm sorry. You cannot fall down. You cannot give up. You cannot withdraw. You cannot get frustrated. You can do all of that stuff during a time your children are not present.
Gotcha.
When they're present, you have to be present too.
Let's talk about boundaries. Boundaries really help me in my recovery. What are some of the ways men can set boundaries? You really can't do a big boundary. I talk about doing a small boundaries is build that boundary up over time. But speak to how important boundaries are.
Tell me, what's the first small boundary you put in place for yourself?
Not to engage when my ex texts me crazy stuff. I would
That's a good one.
text back either a small K or a capital K. Yeah.
That's a very good one. Nowadays, there's a ton of communication that takes place over text messages. So that's a great recommendation for men, all right, to really be careful and cautious about whether you respond to text messages and when you respond to text messages, all right, not to go down the rabbit hole, right? Your ex really does want to sucker you into being a fool and to going down the rabbit hole and getting agitated and exploding. And then, hey, look, they can show that to anybody. They can read that to everybody. Look at how crazy your father is. Look at how mean your father is. Look at what he's saying to me now. Text messages are dangerous. They're really dangerous.
It's a record.
It's a record. So you need to be really careful. You need to minimize. You need to be respectful. You cannot get suckered into text messages.
Why do some men get stuck in resentment? And how can they move past it?
Yeah, you need help to move past that. All right. Resentment is like quicksand.
Wow.
And
Okay.
quicksand is dangerous. You cannot get out of quicksand on your own, right? You just keep sinking and sinking and sinking until it suffocates you. You can get out of quicksand on your own. You need help if you are locked into resentment, because resentment is it's going to hurt you physically. It really is going to damage your internal organs if you hold on to that. All right. You got a heart attack in the making if you hold on to that. So you do have to reach out. And that's tough, right? Because the men that you know have been trained exactly the way you were trained, right? Not to access emotion, not to talk about emotion, to make jokes, in fact, about emotion, and to make fun of guys who express emotion. So finding that safe person can be difficult. And maybe the first place to start is not with a friend, but with a therapist, right? With basically a stranger who is trained to accept your emotion and then can help you to discover how to connect with the other men in your circle and in your network and find the men that are safe and put yourself into group situations that are intended to help men connect and to help men grow emotionally. We thrive in connection with other people. So putting yourself into group situations is really a marvelous way to learn to access the full feeling states that you were born with.
Gotcha. What are some effective ways to rebuild confidence after a breakup? Confidence is really big with men.
Confidence is key. If you think about it, balls, trucks, building things, Legos, right? Little guy, right? You are presented with challenges as a little boy that you are to master. We train you very early that we want you being competent and being successful and taking the risk of doing things that are difficult and doing them independently. So much of the training for boys is to buck up, don't cry, don't be needy, right? Don't lean into anybody else. It's isolation. We train our males to isolate themselves. So finding a safe person to connect to is really important in beginning and continuing the journey towards healing from very painful breakup and the sense of rejection and failure, right? A breakup means failure for a guy. And that's incredibly painful and it's socially unacceptable. We don't want any of our men to be failures in any aspect of life. You guys are supposed to be successful and leaders, right? You're supposed to be on the top of the pile. And a divorce puts you down on the bottom of the pile.
And you share some tips for managing loneliness. That's big for men.
That's a great question, right? Because so many men experience themselves as isolated. And I would say the first step is to connect with yourself, is to figure out what is it that helps to lift you out of the basement. We all have something that helps us to just lift us a little bit out of that dark place. So figure out what yours is, right? It could be something from childhood that you haven't done in a long time. So let's say you built model airplanes as a kid and you haven't touched a model airplane for 30 years, but you can remember that it gave you relief, all right? It gave you pleasure. It enabled you to let go of everything else that was happening around you. So find that thing, no matter how young you were, right? Find the thing that you know in your history enabled you to disconnect from trouble and find a core piece of yourself and nurture yourself. It could be a variety of things. Maybe it's taking a walk. Maybe it was playing in the woods, right? Maybe it's music. Maybe it was dance. I don't care what it is. Each one of you had it, right? You had a time that you did a thing, right? Maybe it was playing in the sandbox. Whatever it was, recreate it. Start there, and that will give you enough strength around you're going to be okay. Then you'll be able to take the next step of reaching out to someone else. But we all have those pieces of history where something that we did as a kid just helped us to feel like we were important, we were valuable. We're
So we talked
worthwhile.
about men going to therapy. What advice would you give for men considering therapy for the first time?
I have a preference for therapy. So the first thing I would do is to tell a guy to search for one of two approaches to therapy. How a person is trained in therapy is critical to your ability to be successful. And that is, I would look for someone who's trained in internal family systems. That's one very successful, well-researched approach to therapy. The other is called emotion-focused therapy, also has a very strong research base to it. So I would hunt for a therapist that's trained in one of those approaches to therapy and invest yourself in connecting with a therapist, and then be willing to take their advice and jump into a group, because at some point they will recommend to every male, you need to jump into a group because you need to have models of other men who are learning the same thing and who have learned that they can access their feeling states and still be great guys.
Let's talk about the one word that I always hear is mindfulness. What the heck is mindfulness? I've seen so many
Well, let's
definitions. Basically, what is it?
Yeah, so it can float around and mean a lot of different things, but I'll tell you what I think the kernel of it is. And I think it's a way of telling others that your brain stores everything. You haven't lost access to any experience you have ever had. It is all packed away in your brain, and it can be helpful to you in order to heal, in order to regain access to the full range of feeling states. So it means take your brain seriously and remember that it's just like this huge storage. It's bigger than Amazon, right? Amazon has these huge storage facilities. It's bigger than all of Amazon's storage facilities put together, and be interested and curious to go finding what's stored in your brain from very early childhood. The truth is, you have memories from the last trimester in utero all the way forward. You can access them, and they will help you to heal from the injury that you've experienced, and they'll help you to grow into the person you were designed to be.
This is a question I've never asked, and it came up. How does a man deal with extended family dynamics?
Tough, really tough. All right. Because you're, in terms of your extended family, it could be wild, right? They could be anything. You're going to have some extended family members who are going to be able to connect and empathize and support. You're going to have extended family members who are going to chastise you and blame you and really hurt you. You're going to have family members who will reject you, right? Who will just like absolutely cut you off. Family is
Oh, family
very
sucks.
difficult.
Oh, yeah. Family sucks.
It is very difficult. So perhaps, all right, you need to broaden your thinking about kind of this extended family, and maybe it's someone, a cousin that I don't see very often, but that I remember had the capability of empathy. All right. So maybe I reach out to that person, even though we don't have a long-term or continuing relationship. I take the risk because it is important that you belong in your family. We all need a place to belong. And so if you have to go to a distant cousin, go, right? Find the connections, find the people who really care to see you recover from this trauma and really want to help you recover from this trauma. And then also go find friends. You need connection. You're born connected. We spend our lives working on developing connections. In this crisis, you need connection.
I found that sometimes friends are better than family.
So quite often that can be true. So many times the family just wants to tell you what to do, right? As though you were some kind of a puppet and they could just put their hands inside and make you say and do whatever they think is the right thing to say and do.
So, how does a man, and I had trouble with this, and I don't recall how I did it. It just happened. It just more. How does a man transfer from I'm divorced, what they identify as divorced David, and then he's single David? That
That's it.
transition is blurry, and I can't even remember it. It just happens. How does a man facilitate that transition faster or better?
But that's a great question. All right. You will make that transition. All right. Because you have been connected to another person And so you've blended together as though you're not just you're the you plus one, and you travel that way as the you plus one. And then suddenly the plus one disconnects, rejects, goes away. And so you have to go through the stages of grief in order to process that. And along the way, as you're traveling through those stages of grief, there will be offers of connection. You have to be able to recognize those offers of connection. You have to be able to respond to the ones that are safe and supportive. And you have to give yourself permission to move forward. Too many times, men in a divorce situation just collapse, right? They tell themselves it's over and they get stuck and don't develop other relationships, don't see themselves as capable, and don't develop a sense of emotional health for themselves again. It's possible, right? You can recover and grow and discover that you're actually a good person, an interesting person, a valuable person. But it's hard, and it's harder for men than it is for women.
Interesting.
Because of the way that we train you to deny your emotion and to distance from emotions. And it takes emotion to like yourself.
Big time. We're going to close it out, Doc. Any parting words for my men healing from divorce?
Yes. Find a therapist, find a group, find a friend.
There you go. And where can my guys find you on the internet?
You can find me at my website. It's www.drvanderhorst.com. So it's www.drvanderhorst.com. You can find all kinds of resources. You can set up time to talk to me. I would be happy to help anyone.
Doc, we appreciate your time on this Friday afternoon, but hold on the line. Don't go anywhere. Boom.